Does it feel like all hell has broken loose? Nothing makes sense anymore. It's like one thing after another, right? Like, holy shift, what is going on? Really, like, holy shift, what is going on? And that is exactly what is going on. It is a holy shift. Are you ready to be fearless and free in 2023 and beyond? Because that's what's required now more than ever, is to be fearless and free. And do you know how to do that? Now, we really need to connect to the Mother's energy on planet Earth right now, to the Mother Earth and to the Divine Mother now more than ever. I am Heaven Hope, and this is Conversations with Goddess. If this is your first time visiting our magical channel in this part of the universe, you may want to consider subscribing and joining the global family of light. We bring you information for your expansion, your elevation, your inspiration, your ascension. Are you ready to liberate your voice and stand in courage for the freedom that you know we all deserve? My guest today is Victoria Reynolds. She is a walk-in angelic being. From 2012 to 2018, she transitioned from her personality self as Margaret to her higher self, Victoria, Elohim of Freedom. She chose to incarnate as a messenger of freedom, author of 6 books, all focused on liberating humanity from the present fear-based reality. She's also an international speaker, host of Fearless and Free TV, a multimedia trainer, and filmmaker. Her purpose on the planet is to help free all life on Earth from all confines and controls of fear, and liberating humanity from fear-based beliefs. And this is her story. And what a story it is. Victoria grew up in a fundamentalist polygamist cult in Montana, experiencing all the drama, pain, and trauma necessary for her to learn through and teach from. Healing her heart allowed her to recognize and develop best practices for teaching others how to transcend the fear-based reality humanity has been living in for thousands of years. Make sure to watch all the way to the end when Victoria brings through a transmission from the Mother Creator of all. You don't want to miss that. Though you are victorious, Victoria, you didn't start off that way. So let's go back to your backstory.
Not only was I not fearless and free, I was terrified. Every day of my life, I was terrified. I was afraid of being a human being because there was so much guilt and shame that came with being a girl.
I bet.
And I don't even remember the first time I was molested. I think I might have been 3 with the man who lived downstairs. My first memory of being molested, I was 9. That was a normal in my life. I was constantly trying to get away from these men who thought they owned me. I had no concept of self-respect. It was always supposed to honor and respect the men in my life, honor and respect your elders. I had no concept of making decisions because God had my life all planned out for me. And apparently he wanted me to be miserable because I was afraid to even be here because I was so ashamed to be female. I always envied how much honor and respect and support the boys got. And I was just a stupid girl.
Stupid girl.
That's what I was told all the time. You're just a stupid girl.
Well, you're far from it, but that's unbelievable. How did you finally manage to get free of that?
You know, it's interesting because I've had a lot of people tell me how courageous it was for me to leave when I did. I was 17 years old. And what I came to understand is that for me, it wasn't an act of courage. For me, it was an act of desperation. And I was at the point of the edge of a cliff getting ready to jump because everything in my life had led to me being as miserable of a human being as a human being could be. I was raped in high school. My dad had promised me to a friend of his when I was 11 years old. And I thought that was my destiny. And I knew that I didn't want to be alive anymore. If I had to choose between hell on earth or hell for eternity, that's pretty much what my only choices were. And so I'm standing on a cliff and getting ready to jump. And just before I jumped, I heard a voice say, what if? What if everything you've ever been told about everything is a lie? And what if there's something better out there for you? And that was just enough for me to step back.
What voice was this? Did you know who came through?
My voice.
Mm.
I had no idea all those years. I would hear a voice in my head sometimes. It was my voice. Now I know that was my higher self.
Mm.
Always, so many times, my higher self came to my rescue. Times when she told me to run when a man was trying to lay his hands on me, literally. There were times in my life when my higher voice would feed me with things that protected me. But at the time, I didn't know that. It was just my voice in my head saying, what if?
Mm-hmm.
Enough to drown out all of the other banter that was going on in my head. I had such a mean, critical voice that was constantly screaming at me about everything that was wrong with me and everything that was wrong with my life. I couldn't hear the voice of love. And just as I was ready to step off that cliff, I heard that voice.
This is so intense and so emotional. You know, we just recently met when we were on vacation in Playa del Carmen, and I had no idea about this part of your story. I just knew you to be this very spiritually aware, intelligent woman that I was enjoying meeting. And when I found out about this background with the cult, I mean, it's mind-boggling. So when people out there are dealing with fear about financial issues, all the things that are going on planet Earth. And I come back to you and your story and what you dealt with as a child and as a young woman, and how you have managed through the grace of your higher self to pull yourself out of that situation is profound. Please continue. What happened next?
Later that day, a friend of mine who lived in Utah called me and she said, hey, if you can find a way out, I have a place where you can stay. She had a family that had rescued her about a year earlier. She said, they told me that if you can find a way here, stay here too. And so a couple of months later, another friend of mine, her dad committed suicide, and a whole bunch of his relatives came from Utah.
Mm.
And I told them, my parents said it was okay if I left. And I got in the back of someone's car and I drove off.
Basically, you escaped. And luckily, you had a safe place to go.
I had a safe place to go.
Wonderful.
I was a woman with a couple of teenage daughters who agreed to rescue me.
Did your family try to find you and call the police? What happened? I mean, you were able to make the successful escape, right?
I don't think they even knew I was missing.
How could that be? I mean, how many people were in the family?
Well, I was number 5 of 12.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, at any given time, there were 9 kids at home. So my 2 oldest sisters were both married and having babies the same time my mom was still having babies. My 2 oldest sisters were both married at 17. Mm-hmm. So they were all having babies at the same time. There were always at least 9 kids in my house because there were always grandkids there too. And I remember when I had decided I was going to commit suicide, I said, you know what, it could be weeks before they realize I'm missing.
Wow.
And so after I'd been gone for a few days, I called home just to tell them where I was. And my dad said, you come home right now, young lady. And I said, no.
Love it. Somebody finally stood up to him and said, no, good for you. Of course, it would be you and your family to do that. That's just part of your path.
I stayed with his family for a couple of months. I had also dropped out of high school because girls weren't encouraged to go to school. Mm-hmm. So I got my GED, put myself in this little college, and I graduated. I got a medical assisting degree and I got a good paying job. When I called home, because I was only 17, I asked my dad if he'd sign the college papers. And he again said, over my dead body is any daughter of mine going to college. I said, wow. Well, then I will get someone else to sign the papers for me. And yeah, so within a few months of running away from home and moving to Utah, I had a job and had graduated from this little college, and I was living in an apartment with a couple of friends, and life had started. Actually, still suicidal. I was suicidal for a few more years until I discovered self-help books when I was 21. Mm-hmm. And that actually started me on my spiritual path. And that's when I realized so much of what my religion had told me growing up just wasn't true for me. I started discovering the difference between spirituality and religion, and I chose the spiritual path. Didn't even realize that's what it was. These were all self-help books, self-improvement books. I didn't understand that was a spiritual path. I just knew I didn't want religion. Mm-hmm. and diving into those self-help books. I called it self-therapy because at the time therapy wasn't covered by insurance. So I self-therapied. For a long time, I pulled myself out of the depression and the suicide and ended up in California eventually. Attempted the film industry for a while, realized I didn't want to have anything to do with that.
You were born Margaret, as you were saying, and suddenly Victoria emerged.
Victoria didn't happen until 2010.
Okay.
Victoria didn't happen literally until a few years ago. So after all that in California and in so many crazy things that I did as Margaret in my what I call my adventure of self-discovery, homeless on multiple occasions,
Homeless.
some really, really very destructive relationships. I had, yeah. I managed to support myself through several economic collapses in all of this, trying to find myself. And I remember my mom asking me once, why don't you just pick something and stick with it? And I remember saying to her, I'm trying to find myself through the process of elimination. So I tried everything that I'm not in order to find out who I am. I was in my late 20s, and that's when I met my boyfriend, who later became my husband. He was the grounding that I needed. Before I met him, I was all over the place. I had no groundedness. And he created the support that I needed to stay centered and grounded. You know, we traveled the world, we had successful businesses, and then I had 2 children.
Real normal life.
I had a real normal life. It's a beautiful 3-bedroom home by the beach in Southern California. I had a successful business. He had a successful business. And what happened for me was the 2008 recession. I call that the great catalyst. So I had my first spiritual awakening when I was 21 years old during the harmonic convergence. That's when I discovered the Center for Spiritual Living. That's where I discovered self-help books. And that's what got me on the path. I discovered crystals and meditating, all this stuff in the 1980s.
All the
woo-woo, new age, bad, evil stuff. Yeah. My parents told me it was evil. I'm like, I don't get it. There's nothing evil about what I'm doing.
What happened to you as a child, of course, was never mentioned.
No. But no, so one of the things I was told growing up is the outside world is evil and the temptation. And the only place that's safe is here in this commune, which has to be where you're being molested and taken advantage of, but this is the only place that's safe. Really strange mixed messages I got when I was a child. So the least place safe for me was actually in the commune that was supposed to be the place that was safe. The most safe place for me has been out here in the world that I was told was unsafe.
Brings me to the question about you saying question everything, because nothing is what it seems in our simulated world. Would you care to elaborate on that?
Yeah, it's actually really fascinating. I've always been one of those people that questioned. When I was a little girl, I would question all the time, and I got spanked for questioning. I remember my dad saying, if you question one more time, you're going to get spanked. And so I questioned everything. And so much of what they were teaching my religion made no sense to me. And I would sit and ask myself, and somehow I would get the answer. I didn't know there was a higher self. I was always told women have to go through men to get revelations. Women don't get revelations. Only men do. Women have to go through men to get to God. But somehow I knew things that the adults around me couldn't explain. In this world now, we live, I call it the greatest video game. This is a simulation. Everything that's happening in this world right now, most of it's not real, which I didn't really understand until a few years ago. It's created by the media.
Mm-hmm.
It's created by the movies. It's created by our governments. It's created by the financial systems. It's created by the education systems. A lot of it's not true. The only thing that's really true is love.
True.
Everything else is based in fear is false.
Mm-hmm. This brings me to your tips and guidelines for how people can decipher and wade through the swamp of confusion that's going on our planet right now. Unpack what is really going on and how to be fearless and free through the matrix and its projections.
But, I go back to that, what we were saying before about question everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's what a lot of people do. We've been living in this fear-based matrix, this fear-based reality for many thousands of years. So I hear people say, oh, the last 2 decades, it's been going on for thousands of years. This is not the last 2 decades. Question everything you've ever believed about anything, and go into a quiet space within your heart and ask, is this true? Or is this fear disguising itself as love?
Mm-hmm.
How can I see this through the eyes of love? I really, really started using this a couple of years ago when all of the darkness of our planet was starting to come up to the surface. So years ago, I was saying you pull off the bandages and you would look at the disease. We can't heal the disease. If we don't know the disease exists, we can't heal it. So we've been seeing the diseases of our collective human experience coming to the surface. So that is to question, how can I see this through the eyes of love? Always show me the truth about this, whatever this thing is that you're looking at. And the truth will be made known. We have to be willing, though, to set the ego and all preconceived ideas aside.
Next one.
The next one is be willing to question everything you've ever believed about everything. Because one of the things I've discovered is that pretty much everything we've ever believed, from everything we've known from the beginning of known history to what we're taught as children, what our religions teach us, what our parents teach us, what our systems teach us, it's all based in fear. So it's a willingness to not just check and ask questions about what's going on outside of us. It's a willingness to check our own beliefs, a willingness to disbelieve everything we've ever believed about ourselves as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Not an easy thing to do. Most people have a bit of a challenge being able to question and take a good look at themselves.
Mm-hmm.
A little scary.
It is. It is. It's one of the scariest things you'll ever do.
But so necessary.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
Have courage. One of the things I've learned, I'm a total word nerd. So I want to go back to the very beginning where words were created. The word courage actually means speaking the truth from your heart. So courage is from your heart. And so don't be afraid to go into that loving voraciousness of the heart that wants to push you through the fear, because it always comes from love.
Absolutely. We had a conversation where you gave me the etymology of the word bride and groom and the whole thing about marriage. Could you please elaborate on that? It was just fascinating.
I'm a word nerd. And one of the insights I got years ago is that women were never meant to be bridled and groomed. It's actually a horse metaphor.
Please continue.
And women have no idea that it is about taming the wild woman, grooming her. And we talk about grooming all the time, like sex predators groom their women, groomed and bridled like wild horses. And I think there was a time in the human experience where women were considered to be, wild women who needed to be tamed and controlled and owned by their male owners, and husbandry that came about. This was a polygamy thing of that all you needed was one man and a whole bunch of women, and you could build an entire kingdom with one man and a whole bunch of women. And that came from the whole concept of husbandry, where you had a whole corral of sheep and you only need one male.
Fascinating.
This is something that has been passed down. This is why I call them hand-me-down beliefs.
Interesting thing to think about. And when you're looking for a husband and you're so excited to have a groom, look deeper into what all of that means. The control of the wild feminine. Love that information that you gave me. We seem to have so many areas of alignment, and one of them is our deep love and connection for the Divine Mother. Share with us your connection to her, please.
2010, Margaret, my personality self, again merging with Victoria, the higher self. I am one of the voices from Mother Creator. In this patriarchal world we've been living in for many thousands of years, Mother aspect of God was basically reduced to nothing more. In Christianity, they call it the Holy Spirit. That actually is Mother Creator. All of us are a Holy Trinity, an embodiment of Mother Creator, Father Creator, child. In the same way that my children are half me and half my husband, Mother aspect of God got reduced to basically nothing more than dirt. She has been coming back and being resurrected. I've been working on resurrecting the Divine Feminine since about 2008. And it has been emerging more and more and more, bubbling. She has been bubbling to the surface more and more. The masculine is actually terrified of that.
Really?
Turkey's been in control for so long. They think we're going to treat them the same way they treated us, when really we just want to bring balance back to the planet. Put mother on the mantle next to father. I work with Mother Creator a lot. I speak on her behalf. Everybody worships Daddy God, Father God. Humanity forgot about its mother. She's coming back in full force and asking.
That's why I created this channel, to bring love, unity, consciousness, all the things that are key to the healing of the planet.
All Mother Creator.
This planet is so in need of the Divine Mother's energy, consciousness, and presence embodied in all of us, including the men, not just the women.
Men who understand that love her too. They understand that in order to build a balanced world, we need to resurrect our mother. And that's really what the resurrection is all about. It's not about bodies coming up from the earth. This is about the resurrection of our mother. And she is resurrected through every single one of us, remembering that she's there for us. She never left us. We abandoned her. She's calling us back to her garden.
Like children, we need our mother because she gives us a sense of safety and security and encouragement so that we can make the right loving choices to be fearless and free. Once again, circle back to the keys to being fearless and free.
Why isn't it free and fearless?
Mm-hmm.
Well, freedom doesn't come before fearless. Freedom comes as a result of facing the fear.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we got to face the fear first, and that's what creates the freedom.
How do we face the fear?
Number one, you have to be willing to question your beliefs and understand that most of our beliefs are based in fear. Mm-hmm. Two is self-trust. Mm-hmm. We have to trust ourselves. We have to learn how to trust that inner voice that's always trying to get our attention. Rather than listening to all the external voices that are always vying for our attention, trust that voice that's inside of us. The way to tell the difference between the voice of fear and the voice of truth and the voice of deception is how it feels. Truth is always 100% loving. Always. And so if there's a voice that's in your head or that's coming from the external that says fear, that you're not enough, that you're not good enough, that's limiting, that's constricting, that's all based in fear. Your truth is always, always loving. A big part of being fearless is learning how to trust yourself. Your voice will never lead you wrong. Freedom comes from doing that inner work of facing the very thing you fear. And when you face it, it no longer has any power over you.
So how do you face it?
Just willing to. Like I used to be terrified of the dentist. I intentionally started going to the dentist specifically so I'd no longer be afraid of going to the dentist. I used to be afraid of heights. I would go on roller coasters specifically so I would no longer be afraid of heights. Mm-hmm. It's actually choosing to face that very thing you fear. And what's interesting is I use fear as an acronym for face everything and rise.
Face everything and rise. Okay. Yeah. Beautiful.
And fear really is nothing more than an illusion.
Right.
Usually what we fear is something that we've made up in our head that isn't even real. We conjure up a false future, and we can just as easily have a great future if that's what we put the focus on. Because we've been living in a fear-based reality, default back to fear. And this is about consciously choosing love in all things. How can I see this through the eyes of love? And the answer will always come. And love conquers all.
It sounds like a lot of the principles of the Course in Miracles, if you're familiar with that.
I've heard of it.
It's really about the changing of your perception, perceiving through the eyes of love as opposed to the eyes of fear. And it sounds so simple and it makes total sense, but not always so easy to do. How does one get to a place where that just becomes a natural default program? Because we do have this other program that is so deeply embedded. To always look through the eyes of fear, always panic, always overreact to the situation, and come from that other experience as opposed to the experience of seeing everything through the eyes of love, which is much more of a mother orientation and a feminine approach.
Absolutely. We can actually reprogram ourselves.
Have you done that?
Yeah. So one of the things I was given back in 2010 that my higher self gave my personality self is what I call the transcendence process. So I wrote this book in 2012 called Transcending Fear. It was the process that I was given to heal my life at the time. What I was shown back then is that in about 10 years, humanity would be ready for it. So I was way ahead of the curve 10 years ago when I wrote this book, that the masses of humanity would be ready for it. And so just this year, just the end of 2022, I wrote a 10-year anniversary edition of it, which includes another chapter that wasn't in that first book, because so much has happened in my world and in our world since 2020 that I needed to write another.
Goddess, yes, so much has happened. I mean, it's mind-boggling what is going on the planet, isn't it?
The planet as a whole is going through a transformation process, moving from a caterpillar to a butterfly. Right now, what's happening is that we are in this cocooning process where everything breaks down so that it can become something entirely new. The butterfly doesn't go from being a caterpillar to a butterfly without that very painful transition process between these two realities. And that's what we're in right now. So it's really important for people to acknowledge, not to be afraid. This has to happen this way for humanity to become what was always meant to be,
which is
the butterfly.
The butterfly. I love it.
Ascended beings that human beings actually are.
We're going through this incredibly challenging, painful, disruptive time. Things are breaking down. They're being uprooted and people are freaking out. It's a necessary part of the process. Since you have transitioned from Margaret to Victoria, or Victory, as I like to call her, I believe that the victory is assured, and you have a very inspiring message for people who are listening about what is on the other side of all of this madness that is happening on the planet right now. We need to hang tight, trust, be patient, because the other side of it is what?
It's magnificent. I've been given the ability to see the future. And when enough of us focus on this new earth, heaven on earth, 5D, love-based reality that already exists in the etheric field, it just wants to manifest through each of us. We are actually birthing an entirely new reality. We're creating the butterfly, each of us. So I remember about 10 years ago, we in the spiritual community were saying, oh, we're the ones we've been waiting for. Oh, isn't that lovely? And then we the people saying, we the people are going to get it done. We're going to make Earth great again. This is really asking us to unify in this beautiful place in the middle of that acknowledges we the people are the ones we've been waiting for. And when enough of us unify and focus on this beautiful world that wants to be birthed through us, we'll create it. Because where two or more are gathered, magic happens, right? Mm-hmm. So the more of us who come together with this unified vision of this new earth that wants to be created, the sooner we manifest it. And I actually, it's another book I just published back in December called Recreating Earth that provides people a vision of what this new earth looks like and how each of us can participate in creating that new earth. As the news is over here all spewing all this terrible end of the world totalitarianism, what I know is we are building a new world that's based in humanitarianism. It is love-based and it is beautiful. And all of life thrives in this new reality.
I'm totally aligned with that. I'm willing to continue to hold that. And I invite everybody out there to please join me in taking a breath, envisioning that, feeling that, and embodying that right here, right now. Yes. I'm giving thanks. And no matter how it appears, the outcome is assured. So I wanted to ask you, dear Victoria, that you actually work with what you call a team. Would you share with us about the team?
My embodiment is Victoria Elohim Freedom. I'm one of the creator angels, and I have a team of other creators that I work with. Obviously, there's my earth team. My higher team, as I refer to them, is a council of angelic beings and ascended masters that I work with. We're a part of what's called the Alliance of Light. Mother Earth, actually, Mama Gaia, is a member of this team as well. All working together, many of us incarnated in human form and some not incarnated in human form, all here assisting humanity and moving the human experience forward. There are even beings who are here from the future who have come back to ensure this time the light wins. My go-to is almost always Yeshua, my higher self I communicate with, but Yeshua, Jesus, I'm like, well, okay, what is it you want me to teach the people today? Because he is the master teacher for planet Earth. Sometimes if I want to know what's going on financially with the world, I communicate with Saint Germain. Earlier today, as I was calling in the Divine Feminine, I had Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, and Isis are all here with us. And these are the feminine who are here to represent. They show me what's going on the earth field from an ascended perspective. So it allows me to stay above the fray. And I think everyone has that ability. If every person stops and listens to their higher self, we can all stay above the fray and see from a spiritual perspective what's really happening on the planet. Have to be more aware of it than most.
Since you are, and you have that connection with your team, and for those who are not able yet to have access to that information downloading through their higher selves and through these different ascended masters and angelics, what is the information that's coming through? Because, everybody's worried about the financial system crashing and the economy and the recessions and inflation. What does Saint Germain have to say about all of this?
Almost done. It's almost over. The old game is almost complete. What's being allowed to occur right now is to allow the human experience to go almost to the very edge. And the reason is because they want human beings to see the depths of how this game has been played. What they were showing me a few months back, the Light Alliance were sitting at this card game, and the dark side of the contrast. I don't call it evil. It's the light side of the contrast and the dark side of the contrast, because human beings agree to learn through the contrast. We're all here experiencing the contrast. That the side of dark is playing every card they've got.
Yeah.
The side of light has an ace card. The side of dark knows the side of light has an ace card. They do not know what it is. In fact, nobody knows what it is. My team will not tell me what it is. It is a great surprise. But in the meantime, the side of dark is scrambling and they're playing every card they've got. So it is going to look like all hell is breaking loose, because in fact it is. Hell is breaking loose from the planet, and we have to see all of it. We're going to see all the hell laid out there on the table.
So what advice do you have for everyone who has witnessed to all hell breaking loose? Just be a witness to it. Keep breathing, keep envisioning. What are
keep envisioning, keep sending love into it. Remember, every single one of us is the embodiment of divine love. We bring in the divine love. We send love into it. We send light into it. The rest of humanity wakes up.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The more light we bring, the more everyone wakes up. The more love we bring in and the more love we send out to humanity, the sooner the human heart is healed. Be willing to have these conversations. It is no longer our job to try to tell our family and friends what to think. That actually was complete in January of 2021. Now allow the officials to do their job. It's getting laid out everywhere. It's almost impossible not to see it now, unless you're someone who's only watching mainstream news. You have your head under a proverbial rock.
Anybody really still watching mainstream news anymore?
Yeah, there are still some. Their head is basically buried in the sand right now. What I was shown years ago is that there will come a point when the media will have no choice but tell the truth. And some people will be shocked by it, but the reason it's been allowed to drip and taking so long is that when it does all come out, people will say, oh, that was just conspiracy theory. Okay. It won't actually be that much of a surprise. Mm-hmm. Because it's been dripped for so long into every possible system. It is being drawn out in the way that is best for humanity to prevent mass chaos. And so trust the divine. Trust the divine that wants to be made manifest through every single one of us. Trust that voice of love and be willing to step out of your comfort zone and help your neighbor. Even if someone disagrees with you, even if someone's on the supposed other side of the political divide, love them anyway, because the division is part of the illusion. It's not real. It was created to keep us from remembering who we are as divine love having a human experience. There is no division, just the illusion of it. And when enough of us remember that and we go out of our way to love our enemy, so to speak, that's how we change the world. I'm going to close with this final question. What is the most important thing that humanity needs to know right now? Okay, this is what's coming in. Hold tight. You're about to come to the end of the roller coaster with a screeching halt.
Wow, what an answer. Okay, interpretation?
Well, it's funny because I'm seeing it's like you come to the bottom of the before you get stopped at the end of the roller coaster ride. And then oh my gosh, you're going to love what's coming in. The roller coaster ride comes to a stop. And then what happens when you get to the end of the roller coaster ride and how everybody's excited because that was a wild ride and everybody's clapping and celebrating because the ride is over and what a crazy wild ride it was.
Mm-hmm.
There's a celebration.
Hallelujah.
The whole entire world is going to celebrate.
Hallelujah. Okay.
So stay focused on the celebration.
As promised in the beginning, if you stayed with us all the way till the end, Victoria is now going to bring through a message from the Divine Mother.
Okay. Into her space. My dear, beautiful, and beloved children, you have always been my beloved ones, some of my most beautiful creations. You have hearts so tender, they feel with a depth that very few beings feel, and hearts so powerful they can transform entire landscapes and move mountains. You are so young, so unaware of how magnificent you are, like small children just beginning to explore your playground, just beginning to understand how fun the playground can be when you play together rather than fighting over what's mine is mine and what's yours is mine too. You're beginning to understand that sharing is so much more fun than fighting, and that when you play together, you can make amazing things happen. There you are, my young ones, my tiny tots, still such a young species. You still don't know who you are. And you've been fighting each other because you thought you'd been abandoned by your mother. You've been feeling the separation anxiety that comes with separation from the love in your hearts. Remember, my loves, I never left you. You just went out into the playground of competition, as 2-year-olds sometimes do. And now you are growing up and remembering. As I return, coming out of the hiding places where I've been hidden, to restore my love, to hold you in my arms and wrap you in my absolute, pure, unconditional love. No agendas, no conditions, no expectations. You are all my beloved, all my dear, sweet, innocent children. I wrap you in my arms and give you all the love you could ever possibly want. Mama has come home. I am healing your wounds, bandaging your broken hearts, and we are going to play games as we all share in the amazing earth realm created just for you. I am here. I am home, and all wounds will be healed through me, and you will remember who you are and all the glory you were created to be. Remember this, my loves. You are me, and I am you. We are one, never again to be separated, as I walk with you now and through the rest of your lives. My love for you is limitless, just as you are, and always have been. You need only remember that for yourselves. And this is how it has always been and how it will always be, the love of the mother for her children, never again to be taken from your hearts. Mama has come home. And that is all for now, my loves. Be in peace and know that I am here and I am setting you free.
Thank you so much for that beautiful, loving, healing, encouraging message from Mother. I'm so grateful. Thank you so much, Victoria, for joining us today on Conversations with Goddess. What a beautiful way to close. Would you care to share with us how people can find you?
Best way to find me is on my website at victoriareynolds.com, and you can connect with me there. My products, my services, my books, my YouTube show, it's all there. I do send out a newsletter every week or so with inspirational tips. It's one of the ways that I give back to humanity. Thank you, Heaven, for inviting me to be here. It's been a beautiful gift knowing you.
I feel exactly the same way, my beloved sister. Delighted that to support each other in the work that we are doing for her, and it will continue to grow. for the highest good of all concerned and for our global family of light. And I hope that this has been of service and comfort to all of you out there. And rise above the fray and use what you heard today to help you be fearless and free in 2023 and beyond, because the best is yet to come. Thank you so much for joining us. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And please remember to share this out with anyone who you think would get value out of the information that Victoria shared today. Thank you so much.
For all time, you are loved even more than you can know. And with each passing day of life,
we watch you as you've grown to be more full of wisdom, radiant and divine.
oh dear soul, you're a masterpiece, a heavenly design. So may the goddess bless you
and keep you all aglow. And we wish you loving kindness